So welcome back, everyone. We are diving deep into something that has been all over the news lately, the 2024 Grammy nominations.
Oh, yeah.
And more specifically, the buzz around Ariana Grande and some pretty big names being left out this year.
Yeah.
We've got a couple articles here that we're going to be looking at that really dig into the nominations and what they might tell us about, how the Grammys are evolving.
It's so interesting, isn't it? It's not just about one pop star getting snubbed, right?
Right.
It's a chance to look at, how the Grammys interact with different genres.
Yeah.
How they respond to, these changing tastes in music.
Yeah.
And really what it takes to get that golden gramophone these days.
Yeah, let's talk about Ariana Grande. Her song, We Can't Be Friends, just hit 1 billion streams. She's always at the top of the charts. You'd think she'd at least get one nomination, right?
Yeah. She's definitely a force in pop music, for sure.
For sure.
And this isn't even a new thing for her, right? You think back to Sweetener, Thank You, Next, Positions.
Yeah.
All huge albums, but none of them really swept the Grammys like you might have thought they would.
Yeah. And that's what's got people talking, right? What does it really take to be, Grammy-worthy in this day and age? Is it just commercial success, or is there something more? Have you ever felt like a favorite artist of yours has been totally ignored by these award shows?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I know I have a few times.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good question to ask, and these articles actually point to some pretty interesting comparisons.
Okay.
Like you got Taylor Swift and Beyoncé. Both got a ton of nominations for Midnights and Renaissance, respectively.
Yeah.
Amazing albums, both of them. But it makes you wonder if all this recognition for already established artists ends up taking away chances for other people to be in the spotlight.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And then you have someone like Victoria Monet.
Right.
Maybe not a household name,
Yeah.
but she's an amazing songwriter.
Oh.
And she's got 7 nominations this year.
Wow.
She's definitely a rising star. But it does make you think, are the Grammys kind of leaning towards highlighting these newer artists
Yeah.
and maybe overlooking the ones who have been, consistently making hits for years?
Yeah, it's a definite shift.
Right.
And it points to a bigger discussion about how the Grammys are handling the music industry. This whole thing about favoring newer artists over the established ones. You see it all over award shows.
Yeah.
Even in other industries, it's like everyone is always looking for the next big thing.
The music industry has gone through some huge changes over the past few years.
Totally.
Especially with streaming becoming the main way people listen to music.
For sure.
It makes me wonder if the Grammys are even capturing what people are listening to globally.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like they're a little out of touch.
And that's what makes this whole Ariana Grande thing so interesting.
Yeah.
It goes beyond just her, if you start looking at the nominations by genre, we see similar patterns popping up.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What other artists or genres are causing this kind of discussion?
Right. So the articles mention a few big names that didn't really show up in the main categories.
Okay.
Lil Durk in rap, Morgan Wallen for country,
Yeah.
and Peso Pluma, who's been huge in regional Mexican music.
Right.
All of them have been really successful, but you don't see them much in those top Grammy categories.
It's true. And those artists all represent genres with massive fan bases.
Yeah.
Both in the US and globally.
For sure.
So it really makes you think, does the genre itself actually play a role in, how the Grammys decide who to recognize?
Right.
Do certain genres just have a harder time getting that recognition even when they're, commercially successful?
That's such a good question. And it's one that the Grammys have been trying to figure out for a long time.
Yeah.
There's a whole history of certain genres, especially those with roots outside of the mainstream, facing an uphill battle to get acknowledged. Think about how long it took for hip-hop to be taken seriously at the Grammys.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the late 80s that a rap album even won Album of the Year.
Wow, that's a great point.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if they're still trying to catch up with how people's tastes are changing and how much different genres are actually making an impact.
Absolutely. And then you have someone like Morgan Wallen,
Right.
who we all know has had his share of controversies.
Yeah.
He's been super successful, especially in country music. But his past actions have sparked a lot of debate about, whether artists should be held accountable for their behavior,
Yeah.
even if their music is popular.
That's a tough one. It raises some complicated questions about how the Grammys balance artistic merit with, ethical concerns.
Right.
Do you think there's a way for these award shows to handle that effectively?
It's a real balancing act.
Yeah.
There's no easy answer, and it usually leads to a lot of strong opinions on both sides. But it shows how much pressure the Grammys are under to be more than just a popularity contest.
Yeah.
They're being asked to consider so many more things now when making their decisions.
Right, and speaking of patterns and potential biases,
Yeah.
the articles also mentioned a few interesting inclusions this year.
Okay.
Like Jon Batiste, Phoebe Bridgers, Boy Genius. They all got multiple nominations, and they all kind of have that more alternative indie sound.
Interesting.
What do you make of that?
That's really interesting. It seems like maybe the Grammys are making an effort to show a wider range of musical styles.
Yeah?
Maybe even appeal to a younger audience that's more into artists outside of that typical pop world.
Yeah, it's definitely different from some of the more mainstream picks we've seen in past years.
Right.
But let's go back to Ariana Grande for a second. I mean, her fans are not happy about this.
Oh, yeah.
They're all over social media, especially since Stone.
And I get it. When an artist
Yeah.
has that kind of impact and connects with so many people, it's natural for fans
Do you
to
think
want that
that
recognized
fan pressure
by these
actually
awards.
affects the Grammys in any way? Yeah.
It's hard to say for sure, but they definitely know what people are
Right.
saying online. They're not oblivious to
Okay.
that. And this goes back to something we talked about before. This push for the Grammys to be more inclusive and really
Right.
represent how diverse
Absolutely.
music is today.
They're trying to balance
That's a lot of
tradition with
pressure
staying
for them.
relevant, and it's definitely not easy. So, with all of that in mind,
No, it's
we've
not.
got Ariana Grande being snubbed.
Yeah.
The different ways other artists have been successful, the role of genre and how people's taste in
Right.
music is changing. It's a lot to think about.
Yeah. It really is. And this year's nominations show that the music industry is in a weird place right now. The old rules about what makes an artist successful are changing. And
Yeah,
the Grammys
it
are
feels
stuck
like
in
we're
the
at this
middle,
point
trying
where
to figure out how to keep
the
up.
old ways of measuring success, like, chart performance and album sales, they just aren't as important anymore.
Yeah.
Streaming is everything now, and trends are changing so fast. It's like a whole different game.
Yeah. Totally. It makes you wonder what the future holds for these big award shows like the Grammys. Can they adapt to all this change in music, or will they get left behind, holding on
That's
to these
the big question,
outdated
isn't
ideas
it? I mean,
of
the
what it means
Grammys
to
have
be
always
successful?
been this, mark of artistic achievement.
Yeah.
But are they going to become irrelevant if they can't keep up with how music is actually being listened to and celebrated by fans all over the world?
It's a real worry. Think about it. We have artists like Peso Pluma breaking records on global streaming charts. But they're practically invisible in those major Grammy categories.
It's true.
It makes you ask, are the Grammys really showing us what's connecting with audiences globally? Or are they still stuck in this,
It all goes back to this idea of
maybe even
evolution, right?
US-centric
The music industry is evolving. How we listen to music is evolving. Even how fans connect with artists and build these communities around music.
Yeah.
It's all evolving. So it makes sense that the way we recognize and celebrate musical excellence needs to change too.
I completely agree. And that kind of leaves you with something to think about as we wrap up. What does the future of awards even look like in this constantly changing music world? Can the Grammys figure out how to bridge that gap between tradition and staying relevant? Or are we moving towards a completely new way
It's something to think
of
about,
recognizing
for sure. Thanks
and
for diving
celebrating
up
the
into
best
this
in
with me.
music?
To all of you,
Of course, it was a great discussion.